Family. They're the people that should be there for you no matter what. And for many disabled people, it's family members who provide most of their essential daily care. Those who dedicate their lives to looking after their loved ones need all the help and support that they can get. So, it's slightly worrying to hear that some of that help may be taken away. Sue and Paul Rutherford from Pembrokeshire are full-time carers for their 13-year-old grandson, Warren, who has an extremely rare chromosome disorder called Potocki-Shaffer syndrome. He's the only known case in the UK, and there are only around 40 cases in the world.
He's autistic to an extent. He has epilepsy, he has learning difficulties, communication problems. He can't, well, unless you know him very well, he can't communicate. He has developmental delay, which means, the way I describe it is that although he's 13, is very much like looking after a giant baby, really.
Squeezing my thumb somewhat rotten, aren't you, boy?
Warren's mother had had a straightforward pregnancy, so the devastating diagnosis came completely out of the blue.
They discovered that this is what he had, you know, this chromosome deletion. He never used to cry like a normal baby. You know, he'd sleep a lot, and he had quite a few soft lumps in his head, which they thought were pressure bumps due to the birth. But it turned out that it was all part of this condition. My daughter was only young when she had Warren, and she coped with him quite well. And then she fell pregnant again. She had a little girl, and she got postnatal depression.
To help her daughter, Sue took over caring for her grandchildren. And although her granddaughter went back to live with her mother, Sue decided to carry on looking after Warren herself, which isn't easy. His condition means that he needs care 24 hours a day.
Warren's lovely to look after, but it is very hard work. I have to literally do everything for him, like wash him, dress him, clean his teeth, nappies. He's in 24/7. I think we feel more about it than he does, probably, you know. Oh, if only Warren could walk, if only Warren could talk, but having not ever done it, we don't really know how he feels about that. But he's quite happy most of the time. He's got global delay, which means that he will probably do things, but it will just take that much longer, because he's learning to feed himself now, which, you know, is a step forward. He's good in the swimming pool. You know, his brain's not damaged, and he understands everything we say to him.
When Warren was a toddler, it was easier for Sue to cope. But as he grew older and heavier, life became harder, and the home she was living in wasn't ideal.
It was an old house, and it was quite narrow, and we had a stair lift there. And when we got to the top, there was a hoist, and I didn't like getting him off that chair right at the top of the stairs like that. I was a bit worried he was going to fall. It was quite scary, really. Plus, the garden, we had steps going from the back door out into an alleyway, which I couldn't get the chair through. And then there were steps again going down into the garden, which was impossible. You know, it was hard.
Sue was struggling. Her council house just wasn't practical for Warren, but luckily there was help out there.
The Home for Life scheme came about because the key worker that used to visit in the old house kept on and on saying this house just isn't big enough for Warren. And I think it was the council, Pembrokeshire Housing and everybody all decided that Warren was the most needy case.
Pembrokeshire Housing Association provides a small number of specially built bungalows for disabled people, paid for in part by the Welsh Government. Warren's home was built with his needs in mind, which included a third bedroom built primarily for a carer to use, and this made a huge difference to their lives.
Just make it easier for everybody, and, you know, Warren could have a bit better quality of life, because he could go out in the garden and everything was wider for him, sort of go to the other rooms, whereas he couldn't in the other house. Everything was easier.
Sue moved into the house in 2009, and a year later she met and married Paul. Paul has health issues himself, so although he wasn't able to help Sue as much as he would have liked with Warren, he did provide a lot of emotional support. And Warren saw Paul as his granddad.
When he's wanted me, he shouts, "Granddad, granddad, granddad." It's granddad, not grandad, but who cares? You know, it's fantastic. One word, worth a million.
Despite getting on themselves, Paul and Sue were determined to continue to look after Warren at home. They did get respite care each week, meaning a carer would look after Warren for a few hours so they could get a break, and things were working fine. That was until the spare room subsidy, or bedroom tax, came into force. From the 1st of April 2013, the bedroom tax has come into force. And given their situation with Warren, Paul and Sue thought it would never apply to them.
Well, when we first became aware of the bedroom tax, it was about December last year, I think it was. When the form came through, she opened it and she said, "You're not going to believe this." Handed it to me. I said, "I don't believe that. They've made a mistake."
The spare room subsidy, or bedroom tax, means that anyone in social housing who's under-occupying their house has to pay for any spare rooms. For Sue and Paul, it meant that their third bedroom was about to make their home unaffordable.
The spare room subsidy was quite a challenge. We want to ensure that as many people as possible, as many disabled people, have a fair system so they can live in accessible homes in which they can afford. But we saw a number of people who'd lived in homes for years and years with a spare bedroom, but with a spare bedroom that they needed for their equipment or for their partner to sleep in, and we saw that they were going to have to pay extra money to have a room that they needed crucially for their lives.
The Rutherfords were being asked to pay an additional £13 a week to stay in their home, the home that had been built for Warren. They had no spare cash and were facing the agonising reality of being forced to downsize and having to put Warren into care.
I think it would break his heart if he had to go somewhere, into a residential care. And I love him, and I wouldn't have seen him go anywhere else.
The Rutherfords needed help to fight the decision. Join us later to find out if they get it. Sue and Paul Rutherford care for their grandson Warren full-time at home. He has a very rare chromosome disorder and needs constant care 24 hours a day. 4 years ago, they moved into a 3-bedroomed house that was specially built for Warren. But in 2013, they were shocked to discover that they were going to have to pay around £60 a month for having an extra bedroom under the new welfare legislation. It's money they simply couldn't afford to pay.
The theory behind the spare room subsidy is great. Hopefully it will free up a lot more bedrooms, a lot more houses for people who are currently living in overcrowded accommodation. What we've found is it's having an adverse impact on many disabled families. We're finding that people need that extra room, whether it's for their equipment, it's for their carers, or for their partner who looks after them.
Sue and Paul heard that the council had the power to award a discretionary housing payment to people in their situation, so they applied. But the forms were hardly straightforward.
We were expected to literally tell them how much a week we spent on toilet rolls, it seemed, and we just couldn't believe it. The detail that we ended up giving them to sort of show how our weekly shop ended up at £100 one week, 150 another, 50 another perhaps.
The Rutherfords also had to list all the benefits they were receiving, but hoped that would be enough for them to qualify for the payment they so desperately needed.
We got this letter back from the council saying, "You have £99.22 or something a week extra income." And we looked at each other and we were stunned. We just couldn't believe it. Sue looked at me, she said, "Where's this money supposed to be coming from? What is it? What's going on? You know, we haven't got £99 a week spare at all." And I just looked at her and said, "Well, I wish we did, because we could save up and go on holiday or something, you know. She'd love to have a nice corner suite or something, you know, can't afford it. So, if we had the money spare, perhaps it would be a different matter, but we don't."
The council believed that they had additional income because they took into account Warren's disability living allowance. But that was being used for his care needs and medical equipment, so although it looked like they had spare money, this really wasn't the case. And they simply didn't have the means to pay the additional £60 a month that they were being asked for.
We thought, well, we just can't afford to pay this and keep Warren's life going, as, you know, we might have to say we can't take him out or something, and then he'd start getting fed up, cut down on meals.
The Rutherfords didn't know where to turn next, so they started looking on the internet. And when they saw others online with similar stories, they decided to put up a post about their own situation. That's how the Papworth Trust became aware of their story. Nina Zammo is their policy and campaigns manager.
We were really surprised that the Rutherfords had been turned down for a discretionary housing payment because they seemed like such a needy case. They were living in a specially adapted property and there wasn't really anywhere for them to downsize to.
And if they were forced into a smaller, unadapted property, then they would no longer be able to look after Warren.
Warren would need to go into residential care, which would be at a cost of about £5,000 a week.
That's over £250,000 a year. It's money the Rutherfords are effectively saving the government by caring for their grandson at home. The Trust called Paul and Sue to see what support they could offer. The timing couldn't have been better.
We were sort of at our wits' end, really, before the Papworths got in touch with us. We didn't really know what to do.
The Trust offered to publicise their case by running a media campaign on TV, radio and in national newspapers.
We were really keen to get the Rutherford story out there publicly because we knew that they'd kind of reached a dead end and that there was nowhere else really for them to go. We thought that helping them to share their story would also encourage other disabled people to share how they'd been affected by the spare room subsidy. Gaining publicity for their story gave them lots of other offers from other organisations and charities, and including a lawyer as well.
In the months following, the council reassessed the Rutherfords' case.
Finally, the family had the news it had been waiting for. The discretionary housing payment had been granted, but only for 1 year. Their battle was far from over.
Apart from gaining them publicity, the Trust advised the couple on how to fight their corner and keep abreast on how legislation was being looked at. The advice and support has been fantastic for the Rutherfords.
What difference has getting the discretionary housing payment made to you?
Well, it's taken the pressure off of us for a start, knowing that we wouldn't have to move, but that's only for short term, really. We would hate for Warren to have to go into care because that's what would happen if we had to move.
It's a purpose-built house. There's nowhere else for us to move to at all. It's just the place doesn't exist.
The bungalow was actually built for Warren with a room for his carer, you know, so it's not that we moved here by choice. It was actually built for him. We've had this hoist added on to join this one, and it takes Warren either into his bathroom or we can move it over and join it onto the bedroom and he can go straight into bed.
Yeah, that looks great. It's brilliant.
But originally the bathroom only came up to about here. This was a cupboard.
Oh, okay.
So we've lost the space there, and everything that was in that cupboard has gone now down into the spare room. But no, I'm really pleased with this because, you know, well, it makes life so much easier.
Yeah.
With so much specialist equipment, it's no wonder having an extra room means a lot to the family.
This is the spare room, as you can see.
Yeah.
It's full up at the moment, but that's Warren's toileting chair there.
Right, yeah.
And his beach chair. We've got the mobile hoist there. Obviously, this is stuff from the cupboard that's been removed. You know, where would I put it all if we didn't have a spare room?
And so this is what you're paying that £13.50 a week for, really, this space,
Plus we need to make space for a carer, you know.
Yeah.
It's hard, isn't it? You know, don't really know what I'd do if we had 2 bedrooms.
No, exactly, yeah. Where would all this go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got to get rid of the bed as it is because we need to get a bed settee for a carer now because it's just taking up too much room. We're just hoping that this, you know, we can get what we want for Warren and keep the spare room for the carers and everything, you know. Because without carers, we wouldn't be able to care for Warren.
Sue and Paul desperately want to be able to afford to keep Warren at home with them, and the Trust is hoping they can help them do this.
How did you feel before? Were you very stressed? Or?
Yeah. I think because Paul knows he's got somebody backing him up now, he can fight harder and he's not on his own. You know, it's given him that extra confidence.
Although it's the scariest thing we've ever had to do in our lives, both of us, we need to do something about it. We've got the Trust backing us, we've got other people backing us now through their help and giving us that confidence to go forward. And it's our hope that we can get his future sorted out now, while we're both still around.
The Rutherfords have only been awarded a discretionary housing payment for 12 months, so at the end of the 12 months they'll still be in the same situation as they were before. We're working with political parties to help them look at the effect of the spare room subsidy on disabled people and hopefully make some change with the implementation.
With the support of charities led by Child Poverty Action, Paul's now taking his case all the way to the top to challenge the Department for Work and Pensions. He's trying to bring about a change to the legislation by adding an exemption for everyone who needs a spare room for carers who help to look after children. There's still a long way to go. So what does Sue hope the future holds for Warren?
I'm just hoping that he'll be able to stay in this house with his spare bedroom and live happily with no stress. You know, he deserves it. Makes your day when you see him smiling.